Hi, everyone, and welcome. Thanks for taking the time to join us today for redesigning the service role for the AI agent era. My name is Chris Arnold. I'm the VP of CX Strategy here at ASAP, and I'll be moderating today's conversation. But before we get started, just a couple quick housekeeping notes. Today's session is being recorded, and we'll send the full recording to everyone who registered tomorrow. So feel free to share it with colleagues who couldn't join us live. We'll leave some time at the end for questions. So if anything comes to mind during the discussion, go ahead and drop it into the QA panel that you see there on the right-hand side of your screen, and we'll try our best to get to as many as we can. Now, the topic we're discussing today is one that we're hearing more and more from CX leaders. For years, service organizations have been designed around humans as the primary layer of service delivery, with AI playing more of a supporting role. So think of your agent assist type technology. But as AI agents begin resolving a growing share of customer intents autonomously, that model starts to shift, and the role of the human workforce changes with it. And that's exactly what we're going to explore today. How service roles evolve as AI becomes the primary execution layer, and ultimately what it takes operationally to make that shift work. I'm really excited to be joined by two experts on this topic for today's conversation. First, we have our guest speaker, Kate Leggett, who's the VP and Principal Analyst at Forrester. She advises service and technology leaders on CRM strategy, governance, and the future of customer service operating models as a whole. And joining her is Nirmal Mukhi, who's our Chief Architect at ASAP. Nirmal leads the development of the machine learning systems and AI architecture behind ASAP's customer experience platform. Kate, Nirmal, thank you both for being here. To get us started, I'd love to ask each of you to share a bit about the perspective you bring to this conversation. And Kate, maybe we can start with you.
Yeah, sure. So I've been spending the last year just looking at how AI is impacting customer service operations, how it's changing the workforce. And we're at just the beginning stages of this massive transformation. And so what I'm seeing is like new roles emerge. There's new titles, there's new skills that are needed. I'm seeing like new organizational structures. Every company is doing their own experimentation of how they want to evolve the workforce. And anyways, I'm here. I'm happy to be here to share what I've been doing and some of the insights that I've gathered in all the research for this last year. Nirmal, what about you? How are you spending your time?
Yeah, thanks, Kate. So it's been a really exciting time with this technology coming in. I've been at the forefront of helping, build our products, kind of take them to our customers and produce business outcomes. And being on the ground like that gives you a perspective on how quickly this change is happening, how exciting it is, and what the potential is. So I'm happy to be part of that and, try to bring all that I've learned to this conversation as well.
Well, I'm happy to have both of you here, and so let's just jump right into it. Because for years we've optimized contact centers around humans as the primary layer of service delivery, with AI acting more as an assistant. Increasingly, I'm seeing autonomous agents handling more and more customer interactions directly from end to end. As this plays out and AI agents become increasingly ubiquitous across the entire enterprise, the AI becomes the execution layer. This massive shift results in humans optimizing outcomes rather than managing massive workloads that, for as long as we've been in this industry, have come by way of large amounts of calls, large amounts of chats, various massive workloads. So, Kate, from your research, what signals tell you that this is a structural shift to the broader service model and not just better automation?
Yeah, you're right. It's not just better automation. And you said I think the words you used is AI is becoming that primary execution layer for customer service. It's AI on both sides. It's like your customers are bringing AI to interact with companies that they do business with, and companies are fronting their customer service operations with AI. So um, you asked about like what are the signals that show that this is happening, and I think I see three signals. So first of all, customers are getting a lot more comfortable using AI to interact with brands, to get advice from brands. We're even seeing this in highly regulated industries like financial services, like healthcare. And we just popped some of our Forrester data on the screen here. And what this is showing, we ask the question, which of the following banking activities have you done with AI in the last month? And there's, especially for banking, financial services, there's a huge risk of getting a wrong answer. And the data that I'm showing on the screen here is pointing to the fact that that consumers in all different geographies are really using AI for banking advice. Just to highlight a couple data points, you've got a quarter of US adults who are using AI to get answers to banking questions or even to disputed transaction. So that's the first signal that we're seeing, that there's this like tectonic shift in operating models. The second shift that we're seeing, or the second signal that we're seeing, is AI is directly impacting customer service operations, because we see our clients, companies are able to automate like full customer intents. And this is starting to impact the skills that are needed from a human employee customer service rep perspective. And this change of skills can be tracked in real time using tools like your workforce management systems, like your automated quality management systems, that are like early indicators, like your skills that you need are changing. We also see Forrester clients really asking hard questions about, they're coming to us and they're asking, it's like, how should we staff our customer service organization for a future with AI? What are the new IT roles that will be needed? Do we need more data analysts? Do we need more low-code developers to build out AI agents? And the third signal that we're seeing, that signals structural shifts in customer service organizations, is that customer service strategists, leaders, they're less focused, it seems, on just pure cost containment. And they seem to be changing their focus more to relationship building, to growth, to being able to deliver value to their customers. And all of these are signaling that AI is really having an impact and delivering real value, freeing up more time for like relationship building with your customers. And that's a complete overhaul of how we've thought of customer service operations in the past. So that's my perspective. I'm going to let Nirmal share
Yeah.
his perspective.
Yeah, I think I've seen this change so much and so rapidly just in the past 6 to 12 months. It was the case that 12 months ago, when we talk about AI automation at the front of the contact center, our customers would ask about, well, what's your hallucination rate? Or, can we begin with chat and not think about voice yet, because voice is so much harder? All of those conversations have changed. People are moving quickly. They have confidence in what the technology is capable of. No one talks about hallucination rate anymore. Yes, there's a potential for errors, but they recognize how fast the technology is improving and how low that rate is. So things like that. So there's a very palpable shift from evaluation and strategizing to acting, and that's happened very rapidly.
Yeah, I know as a former operator, we've been on this automation journey for, I mean, you could say 2 decades. We've been on it, and we just haven't been able to realize that massive leap forward that I would consider agentic AI presenting to us, and we're on the very forefront of it. And so I foresee a massive amount of interactions that have historically the deterministic, virtual assistants being unable to resolve. There being a massive leap forward. And when AI agents are autonomously resolving most intents, what fundamentally changes in how leaders should be thinking about designing their contact centers?
Yeah, I'm going to take that one. And I'm going to answer this by showing you a couple slides, like 4 slides. So let's start with this slide. This is what happens today, right? This is how operations work today. You got a front office, a contact center. You've got self-service, right? Self-service like conversational AI or portals that, for example, give you answers to all the straightforward questions, customer questions. So the harder questions, the harder inquiries end up getting routed over to your customer service reps, and they're using all of the AI assist tools built into their agent desktop to help them resolve the harder work. And so if you look at the work volumes, like on the screen here, you see that most of the customer service work is being done between self-service and the contact center, the front office. And there's really few issues that end up getting routed to the back office to get addressed. So, what happens? Let's go to the next slide. Now, we're going to consider a future, like far in the future. Maybe it's a decade from now, when most of the work is going to be handled by AI. And so, what you see on this graphic is you see the work volumes change, right? You see that the front office does a lot less work than it did in the previous graphic, and you see that spike in self-service. So what's happening is the the work volume that the front office does changes. It gets a lot less. Now let's pop to the next slide. More importantly than the work volume that your front office is doing, it becomes less. More importantly, the jobs that your front office, like your contact center, does changes. And if you can imagine most of the work being done by AI, what is ultimately hitting your front office? You are going to have customer service reps that are dedicated to like overseeing the AI and dealing with exceptions in real time. We call these like human in the loop agents. You're also going to have these inquiries that come in that are, they may be more emotional in tone. For example, like you get a question about, your medication being denied by your healthcare insurance. That's got a lot of emotion in it. You don't want that to go to AI. You've got a question about death benefits. You don't want AI to be handling that. So you've got this tier of like relationship management or relationship managers who are dealing with a more nuanced, more emotional type of customer inquiries. And then you got the really hard work. Perhaps it's like I don't know, an error code on an optical networking switch that needs engineering talent, subject matter talent to be able to address. And that work is actually being handled, maybe not even in the front office. Maybe it's being routed to the back office where somebody with the right technical skills can address it. So you're seeing, again, the work volume changing. You're also seeing the jobs to be done changing. So let's pop to the next slide. And so as you've got new human jobs, a new like your human in the loop, relationship manager, subject matter expert, you've got your contact center operations are, they're AI first. So you have new jobs to be able to manage the AI that's interacting with your customers. You have to be able to build new AI agents. And your engineers or your IT talent who is going to do this have like soft developer skills. They've got low code skills, they've got data analysis skills, but they also have like business acumen, business skills. And that's like a profile that doesn't really necessarily, we don't focus on it enough right now in the contact center. You also have IT roles like that do data analysis to be able to understand trends and case intents. So you also have to be able to manage your AI. I call it like an agentic fabric to business and operational goals. And that could be the role of like an AI supervisor. So it's long-winded way, Chris, to get back to your question about how is your contact center changing. The way that I look at it is you've got to design your contact center through the lens of the jobs to be done in the future that are going to be really different than the jobs that are being done right now.
For sure. I think that makes a ton of sense. And, it's a massive paradigm shift because this is not a small number of humans that we're talking about. Many times there's thousands, if not tens of thousands of these agents. And so it's super important that we be as proactive about addressing this huge opportunity, because like I said before, automation has been around a while, but we're entering into a new era. And I think about as AI genuinely does begin to take on this role of the primary execution layer, meaning handling the vast majority of the interactions, whether they be voice or digital, and I think the future is going to get here faster than we realize. So we need to be sitting up, paying attention, and taking action now. But with the AI taking on so much of the workload, Kate, what becomes the human workforce's core mandate?
Yeah, I mean, you look at it through like the slides we just went through, where again you've got your 1,000-person contact center, your many thousands of person contact center. What are those people ultimately doing in an AI first world? They're not directly managing, they're not directly interacting with your customers anymore, right? They're managing the AI that's then interacting with your customer. So the core mandate of your workforce is changing, where the human workforce is now most of the time directing, like governing, improving the AI that is then interacting and supporting your customers. I mean, an example that, just to go into it a little bit more, it's that role of like an AI supervisor. Your contact center leader is setting the strategic direction of your contact center, the high level KPIs and business metrics that you are managing your contact center operations to. And then all your employees that will have new titles in the future, they may not be called, an L1 or an L2 customer service agent, will be doing their work, but will be managing AI to make sure that the output of AI is directly correlated and being managed to those KPIs that the business leader set. And a lot of this work is, again, it's the oversight. It's also the exception handling when AI can't handle an inquiry, like it's too emotional or it's too complex and it's an intent that hasn't been automated yet. That's going to your human workforce. Your contact center employees of the future are also optimizing your AI. They're managing the AI, making sure it doesn't hallucinate, making sure that it doesn't drift from the responses or the outputs that you want it to have. You're creating new knowledge, you're creating new processes, you're addressing operational bottlenecks. And so it gets back to It's like, well, what's your human workforce doing? It's managing and optimizing and governing the AI that then is directly interacting with your customers.
Yeah, so Nirmal, maybe let's take a stab at this from a more technical perspective with everything operational that Kate just laid out for us. What must be true architecturally for the AI to operate autonomously in a safe and very scalable manner?
Yeah, so there's a few different dimensions to it, but it comes down to having a system that enterprises can trust. And there's many dimensions of how you can build that trust. The first is around security. Allowing an AI to autonomously, run workflows and perform business functions is fantastic if done correctly. But it also is another vector for security attacks. So making sure that's done well. Think about all of the operations changes that Kate described. How do you engender trust within an operations team in order for the humans within the contact center to work to supervise the AI systems and manage them well? That means building monitoring systems, for example, that can help track and ensure that the AI is following business policy and not making mistakes. In the case that it does make a mistake, how quickly can you detect and recover from that mistake, and what tools are provided within the AI system for that to happen? And then where you do have humans that are part of the workflow, either as a kind of human in the loop sort of function, or just an after the fact kind of review function, what tools are they using? So these are all plug points and tools that have to be part of a platform. That's the framework for actually deploying such solutions.
That's huge. So if we take that idea one step further, the implication isn't simply more automation. Again, I've stated twice now, that's sort of the road we've been on. This is a redesign of the human role inside the service organization. This shift isn't a staffing story. That's the role that many of us, the leaders here, have been playing for a very long time. With agentic AI, this becomes a capability story. And if AI is handling a larger share of the customer intents, the question becomes, what do humans focus on that creates the most value? Kate, I immediately think of some of what you mentioned earlier with customer escalations, highly emotive interactions, and compliance or policy related decisions where human supervision and AI governance are critical to success. What capabilities become mission critical in a contact center where humans are no longer primarily handling all the calls and the chats that we have in the past?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's like a reframing of what I've been talking about. Your skills are changing, right? It's more about the relationship building with your customers. You're managing the exceptions. Yeah, and thanks. So this is a slide that you've seen before, and in black, I've got the boxes for the like the customer first jobs. So you've got a human in the loop. So you're managing your AI and dealing with exceptions that can be handled in real near time, like perhaps like approving a payment extension for a particular customer based on a particular set of criteria. You can approve that or deny it, and that would be like a human in the loop, like doing that work, taking very narrow decisions. We talked about relationship managers, those that build trust and empathy and relationships with your customers. And we're actually starting to see this role emerge in a lot of B2C brands that have really high volumes of customer inquiries, where all the easy questions, perhaps it's like a home decorating company, all the easy questions about like product dimensions get answered via your chatbot. And the harder questions are coming in are more like consultative, like what color couch do I need if I have yellow walls and a green carpet? And these relationship managers, sometimes in some of the companies that I've been working with, actually hire these relationship managers to have a sales and service skills, and some even are quota carrying, which is a real change. And then again, we've talked about the subject matter experts that are product experts or policy experts, and they're not in the front office anymore. I think of them more in the back office. But then you've got all the AI roles, and those are the two roles that I have um, in like white or gray on the screen here. These are the more the technical roles, not necessarily like pro code developers, but folks who mix again, low code skills, data analysis skills, and business acumen together to be able to create AI agents, for example, and to supervise your AI agent fabric. And then folks with like data analysis skills to do that conversation intelligence, that becomes a lot more important. And of course, I mean, you have to look at these roles through the lens of, are you a high volume, low complexity contact center, or a low volume, high complexity contact center, and it's going to look different for whatever industry you're in. So again, long-winded. I'm sorry, Chris. I hope that answered your question.
Oh, that's fantastic information, and I couldn't agree more. How sort of the blending of some of the low code, not super technical skills, but business acumen, those two coming together for the first time is super important.
Yeah, so just to riff on that, it's like you're not going to have business people and IT people. It's actually going to be a spectrum where you have like business first people, IT first people, and right in the middle, there's a whole mix of folks that have like hardcore like data analysis skills and low code skills, and perhaps even more technical skills to be able to handle perhaps some integration. But anyway, it's going to be a real spectrum of skills.
Yeah, and just give the audience sort of a real world perspective. What I'm seeing, and Normal, you can certainly chime in here, but we've had people sort of building deterministic flows using virtual assistants for quite a while, and many times those are the people that most quickly move into the role that Kate was just talking about. They've got the business acumen. They know what the KPIs are. They know how to achieve those. They know which systems are available, where there may be an API, where there may be a knowledge article. They have a lot of that, and those people seem to go further faster, and then that will just expand. But that's where I'm seeing a lot of enterprises start. And so, Normal, to you, like when you think about an AI performance owner role, what does that look like in practice, and maybe even who owns that?
Yeah, so let back and kind of ground ourselves on what AI is capable of doing. It's essentially capable of tremendous scale. That is, it is going to be solving thousands, tens of thousands of these customer contacts every single day. And then the question becomes, as a hypothetical AI performance owner, how do you manage and control this type of system? How do you build with it and scale with it? And what skills do you need for that? So it becomes the job is really about coaching, but here you're coaching not human agents, but you're coaching AI systems. You need to teach them how to behave. You need to understand when they deviate from that behavior, which gets back to the point I made earlier about automated monitoring tools. So you need to understand when these deviations occur, how you can act on them, and what tools you have available. So it is some skills that contact centers have today, but it's being applied very, very differently. Coaching AI systems is different from coaching humans. Monitoring AI systems is different from performance management for humans. And there are similarities, but there are also differences between these. So it's kind of going to be a transition of taking what operations teams can do today and kind of learning from them and adapting them to this new world.
That's right.
Yeah, and reskilling or upskilling your workers based on the skills and competencies that you need in the future to be able to interact and create and optimize and govern your AI.
Yeah, and there's going to be kind of novel situations that come up. So when I say, coaching, you wouldn't necessarily coach a human being how to pronounce certain words. It's not something we typically do very poorly at. But with AI systems, you sometimes have to do that because there might be some, let's say, a product name or a brand name that's not spoken naturally by an AI system, and you go about configuring how to teach the system to say the words correctly. Or there might be a particular nuance around a business policy where the content you have is ambiguous, and perhaps a human being might reason and say, okay, that's obsolete and old content, I won't use that one, and I'll use this more recent version. But you've got to be more explicit when you're teaching an AI system to kind of treat content in that way. So it's these small things where, yeah, it is, a high level, yeah, it is coaching and teaching, but it's just applied very differently.
Yeah.
And what I take away there, as a former operator from what both of you are saying, is now is the time to really be thinking about how AI is going to upskill and sort of evolve the roles that have largely not changed for a very long time. And so we know the headlines with AI is always about job elimination. And that's not what I'm hearing you guys saying. Kate, I heard you say at the very beginning where it was less about cost containment and more about how can we better serve customers? How can we move the needle on all the things that we have historically not been able to move the needle on in terms of loyalty and retention and revenue? And this sounds to be an unlock, but a very critical next step is to figure out, with AI in the hands or AI on the desktop of every one of these employees, how can we begin upskilling employees so that we can start to realize some of these significant potential returns? So when I think about, if someone owns AI performance operationally, the next question becomes, how do they actually measure whether the system is doing its job well? Historically, we've looked at metrics like average handle time, occupancy, containment. This audience understands all of the KPIs because that's what we do. But when AI is resolving interactions autonomously, the measurement model has to evolve. So, Kate, maybe I'll start with you. How should leaders think about measuring success in an AI first environment?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And it's evolving because it's not a set of like definitive AI metrics right now. So what we pop on the screen here is like metrics that contact centers are using today. This came from Contact Babel, their CX benchmark decisions makers guide from the end of last year. And you're already seeing that all those productivity and efficiency metrics, like average handle time or cost per call or speed to answer, those three metrics right up top, are contact centers are not even focused on those metrics as much as they used to be. They're already starting to think about more outcome metrics like first call resolutions or customer satisfaction. That's already, that pivot is already in play. And when you think about like AI metrics, of course, productivity and efficiency don't make sense anymore. You need to be focused on outcomes, the outcomes of the work, and AI is the enabler to be able to achieve those outcomes. And so what I'm seeing are these composite metrics emerge that include like resolution rate, right? You want to know, was your this particular intent resolved, and what's the percentage that was resolved with AI only. You want to be able to understand the quality of the resolution. Of course, you want to understand the cost of resolution. You want to understand, was your customer satisfied with the resolution? So satisfaction and sentiment as well are included. Anyway, So short answer is I'm starting to see these composite metrics emerge, focused on outcomes, looking at the entire customer journey, and then looking at parts of that journey that were how AI was able to fully resolve intents. And in each case, it's really you're looking at metrics that are showcasing value in terms of customer customer retention growth, for example. Nirmal, what are you seeing? You're closer to this than I am.
Yeah, I've been very much on the ground working on this with our customers. And one of the things we like to focus on, what Kate, kind of to your point about kind of metrics that combine some of the traditional ones, we think of measuring true containment. So true containment is what we define as kind of going beyond the traditional containment measure, which we know is flawed in many different ways, to look at, did the AI agent do what it was designed to do, which would mean engaging the customer, understanding their problem, resolving it when it has the ability to actually resolve it, and escalate appropriately when it is not able to resolve it because the tools or information needed is not available to it. So that, if it understands the issue and escalates appropriately, that is success, as much as understanding it and resolving it when it has the tools for doing that. I would also go beyond that to kind of talking about customer satisfaction. I think today there is a fairly low expectation of what AI is capable of, and the hope is that, I hope it's as good and like not much worse than my human agents, and the expectations, well, humans will be better. And I think that's something that's important to measure and is going to change fairly rapidly as well. And the reason is that AI systems will be capable of, first of all, there won't be any wait queue. You'll call and you'll get the agent right away. So that'll be a more satisfying experience. But beyond that, it'll also be able to very quickly and better than humans use past context in order to personalize that interaction. You couldn't, practically speaking, ask a human being to review the last 5 times this customer called or chatted, kind of summarize that and understand the overall context of that customer based on what the CRM system updates have been, and then personalize the interaction. It's just not practical for a human being to be doing all that in a few seconds, but an AI system can. And so I think the ceiling for what's possible for CSAT, as well as the downstream effects on retention and the overall customer value for the brand and so on, can be much, much higher with AI. And then finally, I'll say that there are some very specific and kind of nuanced and novel technical metrics that will need to be monitored as well. So, just as an example, one of the things we look at when we, deploy automated voice agents is around, how natural and conversational is the agent. But that's a very hard thing to measure. So, one of the things we look at is, okay, is it able to respond quickly? But not only that, what is the percentage of what we call dead air within that back and forth between the customer and the AI? Which is to say, does it respond quickly and not allow the customer, like, this 6 or 7 second gap of not saying anything as it is looking up information and performing some complex actions in the background. So it can get fairly nuanced, but I would say some, slight revision of traditional metrics by combining them is sort of appropriate, and what we see using.
And I'll just make one, what I would call an encouraging observation as I've worked with enterprises, companies of a lot of different sizes. I am seeing a trend where instead of it being about sort of this cost to serve reduction, focus on cost by way of eliminating employee headcount, which is kind of where we thought that this might head, because honestly, that's sort of where we've lived for a long time. I'm seeing enterprises who are now taking advantage of this increased ability to automate increasingly complex interactions. They're actually using that capacity gained to do some pretty cool customer experience related things. I'm seeing outbound, more proactive campaigns to get in front of customer problems before what we've done in the past was handle it reactively. And so there's some really cool customer experience things, Kate, to your earlier point, that with this added capacity, we're doing some things that probably were prohibitive in the past due to the cost. And so I fully expect that will only accelerate as cost per interaction goes from $10 to $2 to 30 cents, which I fully expect that the economics of everything to change. I'm really encouraged to see how enterprises are taking advantage of that. And out of that is born metrics like customer lifetime value, which lifetime value has a revenue component, which anybody who's worked in the contact center long enough, sales and service have historically been two very different siloed organizations. And I'm seeing these worlds come together for the first time. And you've almost got these sort of universal agents that can do sales and service. And so lifetime value unlocks the revenue component where it's not just revenue retention, it's now accretion of revenue, as well as the cost side. Of course, cost, we need to lower cost to serve, and the automation is going to enable that. So lots of encouraging change, even at this earlier stage. So go ahead, Kate.
I'm going to interject because I think what you said is fabulous. You shouldn't be looking at AI just to reduce headcount. That is not doing your customers or yourselves any favors. AI can help reduce that 20-minute wait time to get to an answer. That would be lovely. But what you're really using AI for is to give your customer service reps, like breathing room, more time to do the right thing for the customer. And then, so I agree with what you said about it's not a cost necessarily. You can't view it through the lens of just purely cost containment. AI is it's changing the nature of work. So your human reps are working on the harder, more important work. They're taking longer, they're building relationships. But what is also lost in this discourse when you look at it just through the lens of the contact center is ultimately your contact center is going to have a lot fewer people, but they're going to be people that are higher skilled and then who are going to be doing more important work that is a mix of sales and service. And so what you're actually going to start seeing in organizations is the silos of the front office, where you had marketing in a silo, you had sales in a silo, you had customer service, off to its side in a operational silo. AI is going to allow these silos, the walls of the silos to break down, these roles to be getting much more aligned. And you're going to be able to deliver on like true customer experience where it's an inbound interaction from a customer that has to be also part of perhaps a follow-on outbound, personalized marketing interaction or a sales interaction. So marketing, sales, customer service are going to be a lot more tightly aligned, a lot more blended. And so your service reps, they're going to have different names because they're not going to be doing just customer service. They're going to be like really interacting and giving value to your customer. To Chris, to your point, it drives lifetime value. It drives enrichment. It drives loyalty and advocacy. And that's what you truly care about, because then your customer operations can be a true vehicle for company growth.
It's huge. And guess who wins? The customer, finally.
Yep.
So Normal, we're going to stay in this vein of modernizing the workforce. And we're thinking about expertise shifting. Historically, it's been very focused on how do we resolve more interactions the first time. In an environment where we can rely on the agentic AI to facilitate that for us, we shift to improving the system that's actually enabling it. How do we go about doing that?
Yeah, Chris. So, AI isn't magic. It takes work to build these systems, configure them, and make them work for a business. So as Kate had mentioned earlier, we need SMEs, domain experts, to be involved and part of that process. the key is to bridge that gap, as we talked about earlier, where it's not just like someone defining business policy and rules, someone else kind of building that, like an IT team going and building something. These become a lot more blended. The platforms available today make it very easy, including what ASAP does for a non-expert or non-technical person to go and build. So we're really allowing the domain expert and SME to directly get involved in doing the building. And that's key to kind of how we think about this. You need to understand the business policy in order to design the agents well. Once the system's running at scale, you then need to think about all of the monitoring and performance management that we talked about earlier, as well as these potential deviations from the desired behavior that can be then tracked. So there's sort of a life cycle here of building, observing, monitoring, and then acting and improving that needs to be brought in. But it's all the interesting thing is all of these different aspects of that life cycle are also often AI assisted. That is to say, you build AI with the help of other AI, and that's something we do within our platform, and others do as well. So it's all very 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 possible, and makes it easy for the folks with the most knowledge to have the be closest to the work and have the impact.
So we've talked about how the operating model shifts. We've talked about how the human role evolves, and we've even touched on how performance measured gets some evolution. But a lot of organizations are still early in this transition, and many are trying to scale automation inside operating models that were designed for a very different way of working. I've highlighted that different way of working quite a bit on this call. But in both of your experiences, what early mistakes do you see organizations make when they try to scale automation without evolving the operating model around it?
Um, that's a really good question because you have to do all the fundamental hard work to prepare for a new way of working. You have to think about not AI as just a shiny object that you're pursuing for the goal of doing AI because that's what your board tells you or that's what your CEO tells you, but it's fundamentally like reshaping the operating model. And that means like clearly understanding what is your customer engagement strategy? What are the processes? Your AI processes that are going to enable your strategy. You're not walking into, you know, a greenfield project. You've got a lot of technology that you're already using. You've got to prepare your foundation, do all the technology cleanup, remove all the tech debt that you have. I mean, manage your data, and then most importantly, take your people along this journey, teach them new skills, new ways of working, the whole, skills, continuous learning culture to be able to up level skills as well as change management as you're introducing AI needs to be rethought. And so what we have on the screen here is just I think it's really indicative of organizations going deep in AI without doing all their homework to prepare for that shift in operating models. So this is from one of our latest surveys at Forrester. We surveyed over 1,500 AI decision makers. That's a lot of survey respondents. And what we found was only half of them have benchmarks in place to assess whether AI is meeting their performance expectations. That means half the companies out there have projects where you don't even have KPIs that you want to be able to achieve that are defined. And that's pretty sad. And then there's another data point 45% have performance benchmarks to decide whether to continue each AI effort or not. That's the basics, the 101s of strategy and execution. And I really think that you need to work on the fundamentals of like strategy and execution before you start going deep into AI. So over to you, Nirmal. What do you
Yeah,
see?
I think it's like very interesting when I see some enterprises applying this technologies. They kind of try to graft it onto their existing processes and tech stacks as well. So, for example, they might think about, well, I have a claims department and a payments department. They have their staff differently and they manage different things. Let me create the AI agent for claims and the AI agent for payments. And you're essentially what you're doing is you're now going to have the one AI agent, quote unquote, transferring a problem to a different department, kind of taking the same types of problems we see today, but kind of bringing them into this new world. The technology gives us the ability to have really a broader scope of responsibility within one agent, within one system than we've envisioned in the past. And it allows us to think about different operational models. You don't have to think intent by intent. You have to think about the customer experience, start to finish. And I think using what's possible, rethink that, sort of redesign that in the best possible way, thinking of what the customer can do and what benefits them, and then kind of go back from there and redesign what your contact center needs to be to meet that using AI in the best possible way.
So, Kate, maybe staying in this vein, and you've worked with a bunch of different organizations on, modernizing their operation. What would you say differentiates organizations that scale AI responsibly from those that may be introducing new risks?
It's a little bit like what Nirmal just said. AI lets you do things beyond the contact center, and it has an impact. You can't just look at it intent by intent. You have to look at it more broadly about what are the outcomes, the customer outcomes, and the business outcomes that you're trying to achieve, and designing agentic systems. You start with the outcomes and then you back into, your technology and your processes. But as you do that, so that's strategy, that's process, that's organizational design, because these processes are perhaps broader than just the contact center. They're going into your back office, to your core, to your core systems. Maybe in a products company, you're accessing real-time supply chain data, or perhaps customer data. And to be able to scale AI responsibly, you also need that governance and that continual oversight to make sure that you're executing to plan. And then you think about like designing an AI agent, and Nirmal can talk about this way better than I can. It's like, how do you design an AI agent, and then how do you test it? You feed it past transcripts and customer conversations. You can use synthetic data to test, but then you roll it out, and then it may drift, may hallucinate. So you have to constantly monitor it to be able to course correct to make sure that your outputs are aligned to your quality of service goals. And then what you also need is that people factor, clear accountability and ownership. Who owns AI creation? Who owns AI optimization? Who owns AI oversight? Because without clarity about who's accountable and who owns it, then that accountability falls through the gaps. I mean, isn't there a saying that says, if you don't precisely define ownership, it's like nobody owns it. And so companies that do really well have that governance and oversight and ownership clearly defined. And again, the continuous improvement loops built into, from an operational standpoint, built into the organization.
I think that human AI collaboration this is new. Historically, we've operated with a very binary mindset. It was either humans or automation. We're now at this sort of fork in the road where the technology and the human can collaborate together. And it's such an important point, everything you just said, to avoid those pitfalls, And so, Normal, I'll ask you this question, but what does a mature human AI collaboration look like beyond simply just handing the interaction off to that human agent, which is what we've done in the past.
Yeah, so I would say, Chris, there's kind of two sides to this. There's first of all the offline stuff, which I would say is all the building and monitoring that we've talked about earlier. For actually handling a conversation live, as you mentioned, there's usually the model is the AI does what it can do, and when it fails or can't do anymore, it'll hand off to a human being. This is no longer the case. This is actually a spectrum of how these two can work together. So, just as an example, within our platform, we have a system by which the AI can consult with a human expert in the background, even as it is running the conversation with the customer. We call this human in the loop agents that work in the background. Another option we have within our system is where there is supervision, where the AI again is in control of that conversation and can work with the customer directly, but it asks for explicit supervision at defined steps along the way. So the human is essentially telling it what to say, and we often begin this way for some of our more sensitive use cases where we need very close supervision. And of course, there's the eventual case where you can actually have the AI escalate and have a human take over. But more and more, we see that happening, less frequently with what we're doing. We begin with more supervision, eventually get away from that towards full automation. So as you work through the spectrum, it gives you a way to start and kind of scale in a safer way and take advantage of all of the different capabilities along that spectrum.
So important. All right, so we're coming to the end of our time together. And to close this out, I'd love to ask both of you, if you're a CX or operations leader preparing for this shift, everything that we've talked about, what should you start doing now?
You want me to take that first?
Yeah, ladies first.
Okay. I always think about people is always harder than technology. I think it's really hard to change people. It's really hard to change the way people work. I've gone into contact centers and I've seen like customer service reps actually scuttle AI projects because they're scared. They're scared that the AI is going to take their jobs away. So you have to think that every single job within the contact center is going to be directly impacted by AI. And so you've got to prepare for this fundamental change in the way not only jobs get done, but how your people work. And that is all about change management, communication, learning, and programs. And you've got to start planning and have like those people management, change management processes in place. That's where I would spend a lot of energy right now. Nirmal, you do this daily. What do you say?
Yeah, I think it's important to learn by doing, and I say that because the technology is available now, it is capable. I'm completely aligned with Kate on all the people management and the process challenges from transforming a business. But it's also important to understand what you can do with the technology, what it's capable of, and you learn by doing. You're not going to have uh, Forrester or anyone else tell you this is a prescription for your organization. That depends on how your business runs, and you learn by starting a pilot, starting a little bit of what can be done, learning from that, and then growing from there. But the important thing is to act, because it's you can do it now, and there's really so much value that's available for your customers. And to emphasize not just cost savings, but just a better customer service, better brand experience, that every week or month that you aren't trying something is time wasted. You can do great things today.
It's great. Okay, so it looks like we are coming up on time. Um, I see a handful of questions here in the Q&A. I just want to let you all know that we will respond to those individually in the coming days. So look for an answer in your inbox. Let me tell you, Kate, Nirmal, thank you both for sharing your insights today. Really appreciated this conversation, and I know our audience is better for it. And thanks to everyone who joined us. We're glad you could spend some time with us. And just a quick reminder that today's session was recorded And tomorrow we'll send the full recording to everyone who registered so you can revisit the discussion and please share it with your team. If today's conversation got you thinking about where to actually start with AI, we put together a practical guide to help. You'll see a QR code on the screen now. Please scan it, download our ebook on identifying the right use cases for generative AI agents. It walks through a simple, very data driven approach to analyzing your interactions, prioritizing where automation will have the most impact, and then choosing use cases that'll prove value quickly without having to overhaul your entire operation on day one. So, thanks again for joining us today, and I hope that you enjoy the rest of your week.
Thank you.
Thank you.